Newcastle United picked up what was a crucial point in the race for the Champions League yesterday at Brighton. In this video, I'm going to examine the performance and explain why I think it puts them in good stead heading into that crucial game against Chelsea next weekend. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for being so patient. I didn't do a pre-Brighton video as I initially promised, but there will be more videos building up to that crucial Chelsea game this week. Hopefully on the channel, more content as well from Forbes. There'll be a piece out on the website this afternoon and another piece on Wednesday or Thursday as well. Please continue to like, share and subscribe. As always, I really appreciate all your support with the channel and growing it, and as I say, I'm aiming to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. It's looking a little bit unlikely, but please get involved if you haven't already. Please like, share and subscribe because it all does help. I've got so many plans for this channel going forward, and a big content plan is going to be announced. Lots of changes are coming as well over the next coming months, but we're going to get to the end of the season before that all that happens, and we're going to talk about the Brighton game, the 1-1 draw at the Amex Stadium in this video. And I thought it was a good performance by Newcastle. I know there's been mixed reactions when you listen to various different pundits and various different media organisations. Sky, I thought, were very disparaging of Newcastle's performance, particularly in the first half, whereas BBC's Match of the Day were very complimentary. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think it's really interesting how goals do influence the way that games are being talked about. Brighton had two shots and one on target going into half-time. They were leading at half-time, and Sky Sports said that they were the better side. I thought Newcastle started really well, had a little dip after Minter, and after Yankuba Minter opened the scoring. Of course, it had to be Yankuba Minter for the second time this season. He scored a goal to put Brighton ahead. On the balance of the game, I think at least a draw was a fair result, but that was mainly because Newcastle didn't create enough chances. If Newcastle had created more clear-cut chances, got Alexander Isak into the game more, they would have absolutely romped home in this game, and they didn't do that. I think that's really frustrating, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But Brighton were definitely there for the taking. They were fairly poor in possession. Carlos Baleba was brilliant, though. I thought he did actually get the better of Sandro Tonali throughout the game. There's a lot of criticism of the referee, and we'll talk about all three of the penalty decisions. 2 weren't given, and eventually after VAR, 1 was, which Alexander Isak scored to level the game. Brighton fans also had their qualms. They thought that Dan Burns should have been booked in the first half. Sandro Tonali had a penalty on Matt O'Reilly that they thought they should have got. Personally, I think that both of those decisions were correct, even though I do understand, particularly on the Burn one, that was a contentious issue. The one that I think stood out for me was Mats Wiefer not getting a second yellow card in the second half for that foul, which actually could have been a red card in itself. That was definitely a yellow card, but I think definitely when you're on a yellow card, that's a very risky challenge, and I think that was a poor mistake by the referee. The penalties, though, he got them wrong. The first one, Anthony Gordon, was definitely outside of the box, and was VAR correctly changed that, and then Joe Willock did dive, and that shouldn't have been a penalty as well. But in fairness to Craig Pawson, I thought initially when viewing them, I thought both of them were penalties. So VAR really came into its own, whether we like it or not. It absolutely earned its stripes in this game. It showed why it's crucial. It showed why it's so important, and why it is such a big part of modern football, and why it does help the game progress. Even though I understand a lot of questions about the way it impacts the game's flow, the way it impacts the game's emotional side. I fully understand all those things, but fundamentally, you can't disagree that VAR got everything right in this game, and it has proven its positives. But yeah, back to Newcastle's performance. I thought it was a good performance overall, but there just weren't enough created chances. Lots of people are debating Alexander Isak's performance and wondering why that is. Is he not fully fit? Why aren't Newcastle getting him into the game a little bit more? I thought he could have made smarter runs. Newcastle made a big point about getting play down the wings and getting chances created from out wide. Harvey Barnes and Jacob Murphy in that first half, they got the ball quite a lot in, and Joe Willock as well. They got the ball into the box quite a lot, and Isak just wasn't in the right position. And I understand the criticism. I think he should have maybe made a few more front post runs. But also, we've seen so many times, and there's a great example against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, where because he hangs back and because he tries to stay in the space that he already has, that can prove fruitful as well. So I do think that there's a little bit of nuance there, but also I think I agree with Eddie Howe from his press conference after the Ipswich game last week. Teams are just doing a better job at marking him. They're starting their preparations with stopping Isak. That's really where other teams are focusing their minds now. In the first half of the season, I think they were more interested in the midfield battle from the start and stopping Newcastle at source. I think that's slightly changed to really marking Alexander Isak out the game, and it does work. Maybe he isn't 100% fit as well. Maybe that's a question that only he or Eddie Howe will know the answer to. But for me, this is just a natural course of progression. I think Yes, he's not been at his best. Yes, he isn't as involved as he was, but he's still scoring goals. He's still making those crucial contributions, and he took that penalty in that really pressurised situation. If he doesn't score that goal, Newcastle's Champions League hopes are in a really, really difficult situation, especially after Chelsea's win against Liverpool after the game. And he took that penalty and dispatched it perfectly. So I do think the discourse around Alexander Isak does need to ease off a little bit, and maybe there needs to be a little bit more nuance as to why things aren't working out for him so well. It's the sign of a world-class striker that he's, even though it's not going as well as it has been in recent weeks, he's still having these massive moments. He's still making big contributions. He scored goals against Crystal Palace. He scored a penalty yesterday, a penalty against Ipswich as well, that assist against Manchester United. He's still very heavily involved in the way that Newcastle are playing. So I think that's what we need to focus on when we're talking about Isak. He will be absolutely crucial in the last 3 games if Newcastle are to get into the Champions League going into the summer. But the other thing that I really wanted to talk about is Anthony Gordon. He came on in the second half, made a real impact in that performance. And should he start against Chelsea next week? Harvey Barnes, I thought, was fantastic again. He really made an impact in that first half, particularly driving forward from that left-hand side. Works really well with Willock as well, who I thought was better. I thought he was okay. I think he never shirks, he never hides, he runs. He runs his heart, he gives his everything, but it just isn't happening for him at the moment. Obviously, his dive was poor, and there's a lot of negativity creeping in with Joe Willock. I'm a huge Joe Willock advocate. I think everybody on the channel, everybody who reads my things, everyone who listens on True Faith is understanding of that. But it wasn't happening for him again yesterday. I think I said after Ipswich, I think there's a space in that midfield for another player who can offer something different. And this is kind of what I want to talk about with the Gordon, Barnes and Murphy debate. Should Gordon come in to start against Chelsea? I still think not, and I'll tell you why. I think we discussed this on the True Faith podcast, the review that I've just done this morning. If you're a patron, do go and listen to that. But Murphy should start on the right hand side, because if you bring Jacob Murphy onto the pitch to change a game, he's less effective. He's definitely going to be much better at starting a game, doing what he's giving him the instructions to play the way that Eddie Howe wants him to, and then you bring somebody else on to change the game, change the emphasis, and give it impetus, do something a little bit different. That's what Anthony Gordon was managed to do yesterday. Was very heavily involved. I think he could do a lot of damage against a tiring Chelsea back line, which could involve Moises Caicedo at right back. But I think that the other two should start the game. And I also think that there's a lot of discussion about whether it's healthy to have 2 players of the quality of Barnes and Gordon playing on, in the same position. There's been lots of discourse around having that quality. I think that's what Newcastle need to establish in every position. I think it's a really healthy thing. I think lots of fans think very empathetically around footballers, and I think that really needs to stop. And I said about a number 10 last week, and then I wrote a piece on that for Forbes, and somebody came back to me and said, where would a number 10 fit at 4-3-3? And I think that's exactly the point. You want somebody to offer something a little bit different. You want someone to offer a little bit of competition, and that's very much the same point about the left-hand side. I think it's really healthy that you've got Barnes and Gordon playing like this, and both having great claims for it. They're each driving each other on. It's really showing in Gordon's hunger that he's desperate to get it back into the team. Now he's gaining more fitness and looks a little bit sharper. To me, he looked ready for action at Brighton. I think that's a really positive thing. But yeah, I think generally this is why Newcastle need more squad depth. They need players who want to push each other, because that's what you're seeing the best of on the left-hand side. I think fans think too empathetically about players. I think they think about how if a player isn't playing enough, will they be happy enough? Whereas the club and the manager lays the gauntlet down to the player and says, prove to me why you should be in this team, and it's driving that quality. I think that's really what needs to happen at left back, at right back, at centre back, up front next season. Isak obviously is a very difficult player to replace. Newcastle will be looking for a player to give him competition That's what needs to happen to push each other, because we saw last season when Newcastle had a wafer-thin squad that it was decimated by injuries, and the players who played had to play all the time. They were overplayed, and sometimes that can lead to complacency as well. It's great on the left-hand side that we're seeing players push each other. That's what you need throughout the squad, and I think it's really great that Gordon is back into the fold, and there's a discussion to be had, but I think that Murphy serves the purpose better starting, setting the tone, doing the job that Eddie Howe wants. Anthony Gordon or Harvey Barnes could come off the bench, particularly in this case. I would still make it Gordon. I think Barnes has earned his stripes to start. Gordon could come off the bench and change something, move Barnes over to the right, as they did, and Gordon on the left against Caicedo could be really good in the second half. There'll be obviously lots more content to come ahead of that really, really huge Chelsea game. It's absolutely massive. Newcastle have still got the Champions League in their own hands. They've always really needed to win their home games, but now, because of Chelsea's win against Liverpool, they really do need to beat Chelsea next week. Sunday, 12 o'clock is not the ideal kickoff time. I'll hopefully be at the game for 4-4-2. More on that later. Do you agree with my point about the wingers? Let me know what you think. I don't think Anthony Gordon should start against Chelsea. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Like, share and subscribe, as I say, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.